If someone, politician or otherwise, is calling for a national independent inquiry now, are they jumping on the far-right bandwagon?
I think we've got the Alexis J report with a set of very solid recommendations. So
are people jumping on the far-right bandwagon if they want a national independent inquiry?
I think those people need to explain why we need another review and inquiry. We've had the local reviews and inquiries. We've had the J reviews and inquiries. Let's get on and implement those. Of course, we monitor, we're vigilant. If we see that the implementation of those measures is not working for some reason, then okay, yeah, we may need to go back to the drawing board. But let's get on with what's on the table. And it's frankly shameful that those recommendations have been there since 2022 and they've never been implemented.
We've spoken to a victim today who says she was sexually exploited as a teenager in Telford. She wants a national inquiry because she believes it will hold people accountable in the way previous inquiries haven't. Is she jumping on the far-right bandwagon?
I think that the J review was very clear that they will put institutions in place, Child Protection Authority.
You're ignoring my question again.
Those institutions will, I believe, deliver on what that young person, that victim of abuse is calling for. I believe that the J inquiry, we believe as a government, they will deliver on what is needed.
Is she jumping on the far-right bandwagon?
Then of course we need to be very vigilant and make sure that we're putting the measures in place that work.
Is she jumping on the far-right bandwagon, yes or no?
It's heartbreaking to see these awful, sickening cases of abuse. We've got to take rapid action to stop them, to have justice and accountability for people.
I'm not sure why you can't answer my question.
I think that people who are victims of this abuse are well within their rights to call for all of the measures that need to be taken.
So she's not jumping on a far-right bandwagon?
It's our job as a government. I don't think that that's what the Prime Minister was saying.
Stephen Kinnock's performance during his exchange with Victoria Derbyshire is a masterclass in political evasiveness and incompetence, leaving viewers frustrated and victims of abuse insulted. Time and again, Derbyshire asked a direct, straightforward question, whether calling for a national independent inquiry is jumping on the far-right bandwagon, and Kinnock blatantly sidestepped it at every opportunity. His inability, or unwillingness, to provide a clear answer showcased not only his lack of respect for the discussion, but also his failure to grasp the gravity of the subject matter. Instead of addressing the question head-on, Kinnock clumsily deflected, citing the Alexis J report as if merely mentioning it absolves him of the responsibility to engage with the legitimate concerns of victims and the public. While he insisted on getting on with implementing recommendations, he conveniently ignored the fact that these recommendations have been gathering dust since 2022, under his own party's watch in many local areas. His platitudes about vigilance and implementing measures on the table came across as empty rhetoric, a desperate attempt to avoid acknowledging the glaring inadequacy of past and current responses. What makes Kinnock's dodging particularly disgraceful is his response to the victim of abuse in Telford. This young woman courageously called for a national inquiry to achieve accountability, only to have Kinnock dismiss her concerns with bureaucratic jargon. His repeated insistence that the J inquiry will deliver what is needed rings hollow, especially when it's clear that victims like her feel justice and accountability remain elusive. Derbyshire pressed him multiple times, forcing him to either validate or reject the victim's plea. But Kinnock chose to meander around the issue, offering vague reassurances instead of acknowledging her pain or providing a direct answer. This evasiveness is not just tone-deaf, but deeply disrespectful to survivors seeking justice. Kinnock's refusal to give a simple yes or no when asked if the victim was jumping on a far-right bandwagon is emblematic of his broader ineffectiveness. By dodging the question, he perpetuated the very dismissive attitude that has allowed systemic abuse to go unchecked for years. His attempt to straddle the line between defending the Prime Minister's inflammatory remarks and appearing sympathetic to victims resulted in an incoherent and cowardly performance. Ultimately, Kinnock's inability to provide a clear, empathetic, or even vaguely competent response during this exchange does a disservice to his constituents, victims of abuse, and anyone expecting accountability from those in power. His performance wasn't just painful to watch. It was a stark reminder of why so many people feel disillusioned with politicians who care more about saving face than addressing the real, urgent issues at hand. If this exchange is any indication, Stephen Kinnock is less interested in justice and accountability than in avoiding uncomfortable truths and maintaining political expediency.
We must use this moment to bring this crime further out of the shadows, provide proper support to all victims and survivors, and deliver real and enduring change. This government has repeatedly shown its determination to stop the scourge of child sexual abuse. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am pleased to say that this government has risen to the inquiry's challenge. We are accepting the need to act on 19 out of the inquiry's 20 final recommendations.
The rest of the statement is inadequate as a government response to such a serious and weighty report. I'm glad she's accepted the need to act on 19 out of 20 recommendations. That is not the same as accepting the recommendations, nor is it the same as setting out what action she's actually going to take.
And that is vital that we consider things thoroughly now so that we make the most out of the recommendations and we ensure that we actually deliver the level of reform that will make a meaningful difference on the ground to victims and survivors and will make a difference in culture and prevent this from happening again.
The exchange between Suella Braverman and Yvette Cooper in Parliament revealed a sharp divide over the government's response to child sexual abuse and its commitment to implementing the recommendations of a landmark inquiry. Braverman, the Home Secretary, sought to present the government as decisive, pointing to its acceptance of 19 out of 20 recommendations as evidence of a robust response. She framed the approach as a critical step toward bringing these crimes out of the shadows, underscoring the need for systemic reform and greater support for victims. But Cooper, Labour's shadow Home Secretary, was quick to challenge Braverman's narrative. Her critique was biting, acknowledging the need for action, she argued, is far from delivering it. Cooper accused the government of falling short on specifics, suggesting that without clear timelines and concrete plans for implementation, the inquiry's findings risk being consigned to the political long grass. Her response called out a perceived lack of urgency, highlighting the gap between rhetoric and reality when it comes to translating recommendations into meaningful reforms for victims and survivors. This clash goes beyond political point scoring, reflecting a deeper skepticism about the government's capacity to handle an issue of this magnitude. Cooper's demands for detailed action plans and immediate implementation were a pointed reminder that reform requires more than headline-grabbing announcements. She warned that failing to act decisively risks squandering a vital opportunity for transformative change and leaving systemic failures unaddressed. Braverman, in her rebuttal, shifted the emphasis toward the need for cultural change, calling for societal reforms to reduce the prevalence of such heinous crimes in the future. While her vision for long-term systemic improvements may resonate with public concerns, the lack of clarity around immediate measures left critics questioning whether her promises could deliver tangible results. Her assertion of the need for urgency and accountability, while rhetorically strong, lacked the substantive detail that would assuage doubts about the government's resolve. The heated exchange encapsulates a broader tension: the balance between acknowledging the gravity of the problem and committing to a response proportionate to its scale. Braverman's focus on cultural shifts struck a chord but left Cooper's criticisms of inaction largely unanswered. The government's acceptance of most recommendations is a step forward, but whether it translates into lasting change remains uncertain. Ultimately, the debate highlights the stakes involved in addressing child sexual abuse. For victims and survivors, political rhetoric alone offers little solace. What is needed is a transparent, detailed, and accountable plan for reform, one that ensures the inquiry's findings lead to a safer society and justice for those who have suffered. Anything less risks perpetuating the very failings the inquiry was designed to confront. Thanks for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the content. Share your feedback in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest videos. Also, join our free Telegram group link in the description for uncensored discussions on important issues.